Behind the Middle Belt killings is Caliphate ethnic cleansing. Behind Niger Delta agitation is Caliphate seizure of oil and gas. Behind Biafra and Odua agitation, Caliphate imposed Unitary Nigeria. Behind the Caliphate itself is the rogue 1999 Constitution. Elections 2023 is Caliphate push to retain the 1999 fraud. Nigerians, say no to any further election in the country. Let's take down the 1999 Constitution and save our people and our land.
Yes, yeah, I can hear you. Yes, I can hear you.
What outcome are you expecting from all the propositions you are making? Perhaps either if there would be an opportunity to sit down and have those discussions you are proposing, what outcome are you expecting, or outcomes?
Yeah, the outcome is simple. For us to either get back to having a union, a federation, all of us who were in Nigeria before, at the time we got to independence in 1960 at least, or if we can't, and that union could then be a proper federation, a confederation, as would have been the case if Aburi was not, sabotaged and abandoned, or the emergence of independent units of successor states from the defunct Federation of Nigeria. I am conscious of the words I use. What has been the problem all the while is the mechanism by which these discussions could have been heard to arrive at outcomes that will not take us first to Somalia or Yugoslavia. Where the politicians are going now, what they've been doing across the last 40, 50 years have been to pretend that there's no problem at all, especially since they moved the capital to Abuja. They converge in Abuja, pretending to be representing people from all across Nigeria, those of them in the Senate. And then the one president will hop out from somewhere, and one INEC sitting in Abuja will dictate who will vote and who will not vote, or how the votes will be counted, and all of that. And these are the things that have been imposed by that, constitution. And so I will say upfront that what NINAS expects as outcome from this entire process is to arrest the drifting ship of state. The ship of the Nigerian state is sinking. We may all pretend, like those who were in Titanic in those days, we may all pretend we do not understand that is what is going on. People are being slaughtered even in their homes. Others are being kidnapped on the highways. Every day you look at the news, you see the ones who have just been kidnapped for ransom. And if killings are going on on that scale across board, and we are saying, NINAS is saying that it is on account of the fact that those who are living in the danger of that insecurity, whether they were in Plateau or in Port Harcourt or in Abeokuta and Ibadan, those who have to live in that danger are under this constitution are not the ones organizing their security, because arms and ammunition are on the exclusive list of that constitution. That is what has brought us to this insecurity, because you then leave your security in the hands of those who do not wish you particularly well. And they are seated in Abuja, surrounded by soldiers and policemen who guide them 24 hours. They are agents in our territories, the one they call governors, again, are in that protection, swearing to defend, upholding that constitution that offer them humongous wealth while impoverishing the rest of the people to the point of death. And so they are all together, all of those who subscribe to that constitution, and these are now the political parties and all those who go to election after election under this constitution. And so the question of the security that people can see all around them that is not there is on account of this constitution. The question of the poverty that has overtaken them, this constitution absolves the government of responsibility towards them in section 6, subsection 6C. I want our listeners to realize that what we are talking about is not an academic, some kind of thing of academic discussion. We are telling you what is happening to you, including the killings happening to you, including your economic assets that are taken. For instance, the Niger Delta, where the oil and gas is no longer their assets, now belongs to people in Jigawa and Kano. It is this constitution that took your economic assets, your oil and gas. You are not going to get it back even in 50 years, except something takes down this constitution. And since it is your signature that has been implanted illicitly, fraudulently, in that preamble, it means that you are the one who submitted your land, your waters, your oil and gas assets into the Union of Nigeria to be managed in the manner that has been stipulated by that constitution. And it is by decree that everything was done. So you can see that unless something takes down this constitution, we go nowhere. Anybody who tells you that any of these things will change, the security you see now, the poverty you see, because Section 6, Subsection 6C of that constitution absolves the government of responsibility towards the citizen. It's in black and white. If you know of any lawyer, whether it's professor of law or senior advocate, anybody or even these civil society people that come to run their mouth, human rights lawyers, ask them whether under this constitution the government owes the citizen any form of obligation for school, for hospital, for welfare, for security. In black and white, Section 6, Subsection 6C says the government can, it's at their discretion to do or not do, and you do not have any legal recourse if they don't, meaning that if they don't do it, you are just go to cry to your God in your church. That's what it is. Then if that is the case, and you come to the appropriation provisions, that is the provisions under which, the arrangements under which a governor can go to take money that belongs to the state, or president can take the money that belongs to the country. The sections 81, 82 in that constitution give the president the spare key to the treasury. He can take all the money in your treasury. Section 121, 122 does the same for the governors. They can take all the money in the, because of the way that the appropriation provisions are written. Because it makes a leeway for them to take without talking to the National Assembly or their state assemblies. And then you come to Section 308 that gives them absolute immunity. You can't question them while they're in office, until they leave office. So if they don't owe you any obligation, and for anything at all, school, hospital, welfare, security, unlike what many people think is the case, the opposite is the case. The entire document is a fraud through and through. Everything you are told is a lie. And if that is the reason things are upside down, they don't owe you any obligation. They have the spare key to the treasury. They have immunity. You can't question them. Where would the dividends of democracy that people are going to run their mouth on TV every day, where will it come from? And so it is to arrest these matters. The fuel subsidy we're talking about, for instance, that nobody knows the price of petrol now, is because petrol, oil and gas and petroleum refinery are on that exclusive list. There's nothing in petroleum, in crude oil refining that cannot be done in Nigeria. But because it is on that exclusive list, people sit in Abuja and give license to whoever they deem fit. They may say, oh, it's one Fulani man that will refine for all of us. That's what you get. The 4 refineries that Nigeria built, none of them is producing anything. It's been story after story and billions of dollars being taken away in the name of refinery. All you need to solve that problem is to remove that impediment. People can refine. What is there in refinery? Biafra ran for 3 years. Vehicles were moving in the place. They didn't have to import anything because they were refining. It is because Nigeria of unitarism, Nigeria of centralized control, says nobody else can refine apart from federal government. The federal government has not refined for us in 30 years. Why can't we get away from the foolishness of thinking that we can continue to import 3 million barrels of crude oil we export every day? Then we get people who buy it from us to refine and bring back to us. The employment that we should have, we are not having. The pressure on the Naira is mostly, on account of the fact that we have to import this, finished products for everybody, for this 200 million plus population. As it is with the refineries, and of course, the fuel subsidy is now where you have to pay for that inefficiency, for that difference between what it should have been if we were producing here, with all the employment benefits, employment that will come with it, because you have millions of young people trooping around, you have no employment for them. You have no electricity. The same thing that happened to, the refineries happened to electricity. People don't have electricity because it's on the exclusive list. Electricity generation and transmission, only the federal government can do. What is there in electricity generation? Of course, the other day, Buhari was leaving office. He signed something to the effect that states can now do. All of those things are bogus. if you require gas to power your turbine, gas is still on the exclusive list. And so that problem has not been solved. The transmission, the generation and transmission. The starting point for discussing any change for any of these things I've listed, infrastructure, the security, the corruption we see because of the immunity that breeds impunity. All of those things go nowhere. The leadership that we have seen, what it has been all the while.
Yeah.
Look at it is the centralized control of electioneering that Abuja sits. You saw what happened in Imo. People can sit in Abuja. You saw what happened in 2023 presidential election. Everybody knew who won the election. Peter Obi won the election. Is he president today? No. Why is it so? The constitution. The constitution of Nigeria is what has enabled those who sit where they sit to decide what they decide that is still standing. So what NINAS is doing is to lead the rest of us to say, we cannot travel on this wrong route any further. Either we stop now and go to transition, to work out like South Africa did with apartheid in 1990, to work out what will become our union, or we disperse from this union of debt it has become on account of this imposition. That is where we are. That is what NINAS is leading. We are hoping that sanity will prevail in good time. Otherwise, we are closer to Yugoslavia now than anything else. All right, good.
It's important you've taken your time to lay this all out. But as we speak, a lot of people want to leave the country. A lot of people say Nigeria is corrupt. In fact, at a point, former United Kingdom Prime Minister says that the country was fantastically corrupt. So, I mean, people are living in droves. If you go to the international wing of our airports, you won't believe what you're seeing. Or if you find yourself in any international flight leaving Nigeria, it's usually full to the brim. Sometimes some people don't get seats in these international flights. So typically the point you're making, we'll have barely 2 minutes to go. The point you're making is that all the problems we are facing today is supposed to be sorted out by sorting out first the ground norm, isn't it? Which is the Constitution.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So and how do we proceed with this? We'll just have 2 minutes. What do you think?
Right.
Who should be listening to what you're saying? Who should, steer some action in this direction?
Those 200 million people who are living in the fear of being killed, whether they are traveling or they're in their homes, in Abuja or in Port Harcourt or in Ibadan or Lagos, those people who are watching their currency collapsing, their economy upside down, those people who do not have equal opportunities with others who are so privileged, all of them, the only thing NINAS is inviting them to do now, two things: to put aside all of what they thought was the problem before, because that place they're going to is not the solution. They have to understand what the problem is, that it is this constitution, and that elections only renew the life of this constitution. The politicians who are cutting away billions and billions of naira and dollars every day are able to do so on account of the authorization of this constitution. And so, if we want a reversal of that situation, we must now demand a transition. NINAS has placed a plan on the table that can guide everybody through it. The constitutional force majeure. And there's a 5-point proposition that takes us from start to finish for what needs to be done now. The only thing that needs to happen is that the peoples of Nigeria must now connect with that entire plan and make a concerted demand for a transition. If we wait, the election has happened and we saw that it was inconclusive. We saw that the constitution was abandoned by both INEC and the judiciary. But since you are the ones who have to make constitution, and you have the peoples of Nigeria have veto on account of what I had earlier explained. They have veto over what is their constitution. So we can wake up inside February of 2024 to demand. That's all that we need to do now, to join in saying that NINAS is right, because we have examined what NINAS said, that we must now go to transition to rework the basis of our union. And if we're not doing that on account of people who are refusing to come, let us also bear in mind that the situation is not as helpless as it seems. Those who can manage their own affairs are going to take unilateral steps in self-determination, which is inalienable. Their sovereignty is inalienable. Those who sit in Abuja and hope that it is this forgery that will be basis of union forever, they are just making a mistake. those who are being killed are not going to endure the killings. They've endured the seizure of the economic assets. They've endured all kinds of other indignities and dislocations. But to be slaughtered, to now be replaced by populations that are pouring in across the border, or that those who impose themselves now as government are doing all the kinds of things we see them doing. Nobody is discussing anything that might solve the problem. Okay. Let the peoples of Nigeria demand a transition now so that we can go and solve this problem. Otherwise, it will go up in smoke, and it is avoidable.
All right. We have to thank you so much for your contributions on the Eastern Eye tonight. Tony Nnadi is, of course, he's been, laying it out here. Tony Nnadi is a legal practitioner, Secretary General of the Lower Niger Congress, LNC, and the co-convener of the NINAS, that is Nigerian Indigenous Nationalities Alliance for Self-Determination. Thank you so much for your perspectives on the program tonight.
Yeah, thank you. Welcome everybody once more. It will be very much in order to say congratulations to all of us because what happened yesterday was evidence of our victory for something we have tried to, the very people who have been most unreceptive, most adamantly opposed to everything we've been trying to tell them, all by themselves, the pressure of what we're doing compelled them.
Sorry to interrupt you. Could you tell us what the meeting is because of the recording? Some people may listen to the recording in the future and may not know the colloquium. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, the meeting I talked about is the one-day national colloquium convened by Chief Emeka Anyoko and some other persons, which they titled the Constitutional Future of Nigeria. That's a colloquium, a national colloquium on the constitutional future of Nigeria, with a theme: lawful. They are looking for lawful processes for achieving a new constitution. A lawful procedure for achieving. That's just a paraphrasing. And so they gathered in search of a lawful procedure for achieving a new constitution. In their imagination, it is just all about writing a new constitution. That's wrong in itself. And as you might have seen, NINAS had written, as their colloquium was advertised, because we have to interpret. Part of our task is to interpret what is happening around the project of our, around our campaign. So whether it's the National Assembly that throws up some advertisement or for constitutional amendment, yes, that's a subject that relates directly to what we're pursuing. Or it is the colloquium that will have present all the people that advertise will come, going by the antecedents of their spokesperson. He was with us in this process. We knew that there must be some arrangement to bring all kinds of people to now railroad a predetermined position into the status of national consensus. Our suspicion is that seeing what has happened to the National Assembly's attempt and the kind of resistance that had come from us from the time Olisa Bokoba tried to guide them through the Appian way of how to write another constitution and throw on everybody, they then decided to look outside the government to bring the owners of the project I will not be surprised if the long hands of Britain happen to be in the background, because for Chief Emeka Anyaoku to be the convener, I'm quite. We have grounds to believe that there must have been a certain level of consultation spanning all the way through Abuja to Sokoto to London and back. And why would they want to set up such a colloquium? Going by their theme, going by the purpose advertised, you will see that there is now an emergency around the subject matter. What is that emergency? We could see that they all now accept, unlike what has been across the last 24 years, there's now a consensus that nobody can question or dispute, that the Unitary Constitutional Agreement of Nigeria is the problem, and that Nigeria is upside down, Nigeria is the way it is, Nigeria is failing the way it's failing, Nigerians are in the miseries they are in on account of that constitution. And so it followed naturally that they are all in consensus that that constitution has to go wholesale. That's item 2, that the constitution is the problem and not any other thing. That the constitution has to go wholesale and not some kind of piecemeal adjustment to it. More importantly, despite the best effort of Michael Zekome to point them towards the National Assembly as the venue for reworking what has to be reworked, of course, the colloquium rejected that, to say it's not the National Assembly that will go to discuss Chief Adebanjo particularly. Did ask Michael Zekome, are you not a lawyer to realize that the National Assembly is a product of the Constitution that is a fraud, that is being rejected, that has been defeated? Where do you want them to stand? How do you want them to stand? What's their standing coming from that Constitution to be the ones to now cure? It's like being inside a ship and trying to save that ship from. If you're inside the ship, you need something outside to pull the ship if it's sinking. So National Assembly is at the bottom of that ship inside. So not in any position to be, and that's have been our contention. So where does that leave everybody? We come to what it is that NINAS have been telling them. If we go to our 5-point proposition, we will immediately see that this colloquium has fallen, has put itself, in line in the first item, has put itself in line with the second item. That's that there's a union dispute arising from constitutional grievances flowing from that constitution that was imposed, and that constitution will have to be decommissioned wholesale. Then we come to the question of our own item 3, in which we say let's not go to election. The urgency that has been established around the need to solve that problem is even more than what the urgency that NINAS tried to bring to it. So that Tambuwal, the former Speaker of Nigeria's House of Representatives, and the former Governor of Sokoto State, 2 tenures on each bit, will say that they now need to recourse to doctrine of necessity. That is, the urgency is such that there is no point waiting for the rules to be observed or whatever will stand their way, that they have to do what they did to be able to restore Jonathan when it appeared everything was not was standing their way. And so that urgency, for which reason NINAS say we must suspend the journey to elections and get into transition to go and deal with the matter so that it doesn't overtake us, because they didn't go to the election, now that urgency has come upon them, and they're now talking about doctrine of necessity, but they're still pointing at National Assembly. Now, the question of who would do it, since they say the National Assembly cannot be the one to do it, does that not bring them back to where NINAS was saying it is the constituent components of Nigeria that have to decide? We saw Dr. Tunji Abayomi. These are people, every person that spoke in that event yesterday had been engaged by NINAS across time. Some at length, others not so casually, but at least sufficiently to have to require a different behavior in terms of what they've done with our propositions. So where have all of them been all these years? And throughout that colloquium, no one of them found the courage or the presence of mind to point. They were pointing in every other direction of all the other initiatives. So we're talking about PRONACO. Meanwhile, it is NINAS that if PRONACO happened, it was because the conveners of NADECO continued in that capacity. And if anybody will now come in 2024 to talk about PRONACO, at the time NINAS that carried forward from where PRONACO stopped, it became eminent that will enforce the consensus, the countrywide consensus achieved by PRONACO. Then from that, we went to court to say that we didn't make that concession, mandating the constituent blocks as we had arranged them in formations in which they can take back their sovereignty, since the constitution is what had been detaining our sovereignty from us. And so, no matter how anybody looks at it, it was what we were trying to tell them about the imperative, the self-determination imperative in consequence of our sovereignty. Our sovereignty is the basis of the constituent powers required to make constitution. The falsehood and the fraud of alleging that we had exercised that sovereignty and that we made the 1999 constitution has come to grief now. Everybody is living with the consequences of that falsehood. And so they are searching for direction. What are we saying? They have resolved the question of what is wrong. What shall we do? In favor of what NINAS have been telling them. But now they can't find any starting point for how. If we want to get these things done, going by what all of them had said, if we want to get these things done, how do we proceed? The only thing on the table, the only proposition on the table for how to do all of what they had discussed throughout that yesterday is the NINAS framework, the NINAS proposition, the NINAS 5-point proposition that takes the matter from what exactly is the problem, constitution. What exactly do we have to do? Decommissioning. When shall we do it? Since the whole place is in free fall. Immediate. Because we say, let us leave all the other talk about election, including the one of 2027. Let us, even the one of 2023, convert the rickety outcome into a transitioning immediately. That can be done in March of 2024 if we have come to sufficient presence of mind of wanting to solve the problem. It will only take an announcement by whoever can speak for Nigeria, including the interregnum president, to say, look, we have a problem now. It doesn't need any authorization of National Assembly. National Assembly had been, they had been complicit in the crime that Abraham Abaka initiated of imposing that constitution. They have been swearing to defend and uphold it. They have been clutching onto it, clinging tenaciously to it, enforcing it against the rest of us in the manner that all they need to do now is to get themselves out of the way. The way and manner they do it, whether they pass a resolution or they pass a legislation to say, look, gentlemen, it is not for that thing they said informally the other time, they can say it formally and get themselves out of the way and strengthen the hand of the head of the executive branch to make, their kind of announcement that Frederick de Klerk, they can mandate the president to make the kind of announcement that Frederick de Klerk had to make in South Africa in 1990 concerning the apartheid constitution that had to be decommissioned. That's the only thing that they can do now that can make sense. We are not dependent on their doing it to make progress. What we are doing, what NINAS has rolled out, already produced an outcome. That outcome is that that constitution is dead. Anybody who doesn't understand it is likely to be a casualty of it. A document that is a forgery dies the moment it is discovered to be a forgery. It doesn't require any procedure, like you go and photocopy a $100 bill or a 1,000 naira note. Now you go and photocopy it because it looks like everybody who sees it will know that it's not money, it's dot, it's fake, it's a forgery. And so whatever benefit, imagine the title deed over a vast piece of estate. And that's what this constitution is to the estate we call Nigeria, because Nigeria is all about land, going from Sokoto to Kebbi to Katsina to Kano to Jigawa, all the way to Borno, coming through Adamawa, landing in Akwa Ibom and rivers, and coming back through Ondo to Lagos, going up through Kwara to Sokoto again. It is just the description of that landmass. That was what Awolowo said about geographical expression. So that Nigeria is an aggregation of lands. But what now makes it a political union is that that land, that vast piece of estate, is made up of distinct ancestral spaces. Yoruba in Yoruba land, Ijo in Ijo land, Igbo in Igbo land, Edo in Edo land, Tiv in Tiv land. It is the aggregation of all these peoples into one political union that is called to constitute, and nobody else can bring them into that union legitimately except they go to a meeting in which they identify themselves with their land, because there could be no strangers on that table. When you go to the preamble to let us know what has to be done now, whether the government comes along or it doesn't, whether anybody comes along or they don't, the owners of the lands that are called Nigeria, whose assets and the rights to work those assets and the right to defend themselves have been taken away by the people imposing themselves on them by way of a forgery of a title deed. That constitution is in the place of a title deed, and it is not coming from where it says it's coming. Therefore, it's a forgery and a fraud, and therefore, right now we have no union because we have exposed the falsehood of that claim. And so whatever anybody else is saying, the only thing that is constant, the only thing that will not change right now is the fact that there is a Yoruba land occupied by Yoruba people in their ancestral space. There's an Ijo land occupied by Ijo people in their ancestral space. It doesn't matter what the sovereignty we call Nigeria is pretending to be doing all around, shooting here, stealing there, and generally insulting everybody everywhere. That can be going on. The same way the British came and marauded for some time, eventually they had to pull away. Our sovereignty never left us, even at that time. Our sovereignty has not left us even now. And so the only thing that is now in danger is that sovereignty defined by this forgery. That Nigeria that is created, that is not our project, that is the project of those who impose that constitution. That's the only thing that we have to get out of our spaces. And so we have arrived happily at that bus stop of no union. If anybody wants to know why, go to that preamble. The claim that we, the people, have solemnly resolved to live in unity and therefore made and gave unto ourselves the following constitution. Those three claims are patently
false, self-evidently false. Why do we say so? The decree number 24 of 1999, by which that falsehood was orchestrated, tells the story. Absalom Abaka told the story of how he formed a committee that he called Constitution Drafting Committee that went around Constitution coordinating, debating, whatever. A committee that will coordinate the debate for what kind of constitution? Debate between who and who? Did they invite the Yoruba that owns a portion of that estate to come to sit down with the Edo, to sit down with the Igbo, the Chief, the Bero, the Ogoja? That is the only meeting that will become constitution. Every other meeting will look like what the British did in 1914, where they signed treaties with the owners of identifiable territories, distinct owners of identifiable territories, and then on their own, at their own time, went to aggregate those territories on paper without talking to the people and began to call them all kinds of names. Protectorate of the northern Nigeria, Protectorate of southern Nigeria, then eastern region and northern region, and then it suddenly became states. When Gowon came, became 12 states. Why are you not dealing with those who can become countries of their own if Nigeria, the impostor that emerged since 1966, is out of the way? They evaded, sidestepped, avoided the owners of the sovereignty in 1914. They are doing it again now, avoiding the owners of the sovereignty by calling them Imo State and Abia State and South-South geopolitical zone, or not Central geopolitical zone. These are all the descriptions and the impositions of this suzerainty. Just like the Berlin Conference and the boundaries it created, and the names it imposed, and the shackles that came with it. That's what we are living with. But as the God who have it, they put our signature on the only title deed they can show, which is that constitution. When we set out in our campaign to take down that constitution, they didn't understand what we were talking about. Now they are face to face with the consequences of our success. We have succeeded in building an alliance of the victims of that monster that is called Nigeria, the Nigeria of one Nigeria, the Nigeria of Unitary Nigeria, the Nigeria that is owned by the Caliphate, defined by that Constitution of 1999, as imposed since 1979. What was the other big thing that came out of that conference of yesterday? The confession of the very one who wrote for the ministry, for the Caliphate, more or less, the very one who wrote what became that constitution, saying that that's Ben Wabeze. You saw when Obong Victor Atta read the confession and admission of Ben Wabeze in saying that they thought that a unitary constitution will bring them faster to unity, and that they now found out after many years that that very unitary constitution has become the reason for the kind of disunity that had taken over the country. We saw Ike Nwachukwu, the general, also saying, yes, we the military. This was what we had in mind when we were doing all of this. We thought it would work. It has not worked. Why can't we stop and change what is not working into something that can work? But the error most of them are still making, they are still talking about writing of constitution. And I did attend the meeting like many of our people virtually. We said we just wrote our open memo by which we told them what the issues were and whatever they were going to discuss, except they provide and furnish everybody with a better diagnosis that does not accord with the constitution being the problem, except they come up with a better prescription than the constitution being decommissioned, except they come with a better procedure than the one presented or by the 5-point proposition of NINAS. then if they don't have all this, since they have agreed that that constitution is the problem, is a fraud, has to be changed, and not by the National Assembly, then they must find the courage to turn around and say, NINAS is right, transition to go and work it by the peoples of Nigeria. That's the only thing that can come out that, from we don't know the communique they're going to write, but anything else they present that doesn't match what we have just heard will be lying to themselves, because everybody listened live when they were making these confessions and reaching this consensus. And so what we do with the situation is that their consensus leaves them in a position that can be summarized as NINAS is right. Imagine if at the point of closing remarks, somebody mounted that podium and said, considering everything that has been said here today, can we now all affirm that NINAS is right? You will get a thunderous ovation in that hall, because that was where their deliberations landed them by their own volition. It wasn't we that summoned it, but the outcome of everything they said tallied with what we've been trying to get them to see all the while. But they chose to dance around in the forest for this many years, and look at the number of people that are now being killed. Then the suggestion of a doctrine of necessity is also indication that they are now in a fix. They are now in a bind, what they call a bind. Our campaign has them in a pinfall, and that constitution in a chokehold. It's not a place they can stay for long, except they want to, just collapse. And the joker in our hand is that whatever they choose to do, the fact that we have already defeated that constitution brings us to the point of no union. Right now, there's no union. I'm sure we saw it in the last broadcast where we were telling the people who were suggesting parliamentary system that there's a preliminary, there are two big, issues you have to take on before you begin to think about system of government. The first big issue is, who are we the people? I'm sure some of us listened to Dr. Abayomi when he was trying to, illuminate and explain what Olanipoku has said before about who are we the people. Is it any bunch of people you meet in Dugbe market that will become the we the people, or the constituent components as identified on their nationality basis in their ancestral spaces? Those are the only people that the people you call the peoples of Nigeria are the only ones who can go to meet to decide to submit themselves into any union. And where we are now is that in the absence of in the situation of no union that is represented by that defeat of that constitution, because that pretense had been busted, and we do not need any meeting for everybody to take back their sovereignty. If our people will listen to us even now, it was that constitution that took the economic assets, the oil and gas of Niger Delta, the limestone of Benue, the ports of Lagos, the bitumen of Ondo, the gold of Ogbomoso, and everything in between. Is that constitution that confiscated it, the right to work those assets, whether we generate electricity from Oji River, or we build a power plant that requires gas anywhere we can find gas, including Ibokoda. It is that constitution that made it impossible. And so right now, with the defeat of that constitution, everybody can take the economic asset today, not tomorrow. It is that constitution that says you couldn't touch gun. With the defeat of that constitution, anybody who can find guns from anywhere, nothing stands between you and the gun. It's only that constitution that says you cannot, that put it on the exclusive list. And so between the guns and the economic assets And the fact that we do not need to go to meet anybody in Abuja. The Yoruba can organize themselves in Yoruba land and refuse to go to any meeting in Abuja. The Ijo can meet with their neighbors, whichever formation of which in the Charter of Relationships we have, you could see the map of 1885 that delineates the eastern half of southern Nigeria into its constituent components that could federate in agreement, in consensus, in discussion to be a bloc. They may refuse to go to any meeting and just process their charter of relationship into a constitution that will federate them. The Middle Belt can do the same. The Chief, the Doma, the Juku, the Berom, Qatar. All of them can refuse to go to Abuja as things stand. And so when we say that the choices available to all the sides right now will be between unconditional surrender to the 5-point proposition of NINAS or comprehensive defeat. How would that defeat happen? With all of what we have done, it didn't happen overnight. It didn't happen overnight that constitution was defeated. Every single step we took from 1999, including MNN, including going to court, including the solemn assemblies that followed the Lagos Declaration of 2011, including Freedom Park, culminating in this constitutional force majeure, including the undertakings in New York by which we got about this instrument on self-determination, including our undertakings in Washington by which we were able to tie the hands of the Buhari that came with Fulani through our borders open to carry out an invasion for conquest against all of us. It hasn't quite gone away, but Buhari could not finish with it because we were able to get to Washington that was at war with their collaborators from the Middle East. So having done all of this, that constitution has lost its life, and the owners of the sovereignties that were hijacked by that constitution, and when I say sovereignty, it includes all your assets, economic assets, and your right to own and control those assets, your right to work those assets if you want electricity, if you want infrastructure, even the matter of electing who will govern you. It is that constitution that sits in Abuja and imposes the kind of criminals we see, who then swear to defend and uphold the fraud by which your assets are detained. And look at what happens. They are growing in leaps and bounds in terms of the trillions they are sharing among themselves, and the people they claim to represent, the people they claim to be governing, in the name of that constitution that has the signature of those people, are dying on the streets out of hunger. It doesn't bother them because they're in the refuge camp called Abuja. Nobody can come to question them there. They have soldiers and policemen standing around. If you don't take if you don't organize yourself, they can come to your space and do the kind of thing we saw them doing in Delta. Whatever is the issue, why do you go to burn down the whole village? What were the soldiers doing there at the time they were? What led to that attack? Nobody advocates anarchy. We are saying we have a union dispute that is manifesting itself in all kinds of ways. We have an invasion. We have an invasion, a Fulani conquest invasion that is in progress, actively being pursued. Any solution that does not put the responsibility and the charge back in our hands is not a solution. Any solution that will be orchestrated and organized by that Nigeria, that is the suzerainty, that is the monster occupying our spaces, is not a solution. The solution to security is the day Yoruba people take charge of organizing their security. The day Ijaw people take charge of organizing their security. Everything will fail. And it's a choice you have to make. The impediment, the roadblock are being removed. If our people refuse, to listen to what has changed and stand up and walk out of the prison compound, charge out of the prison compound, which is the joint jailbreak we're talking about. They are not even listening. They are still waiting for government to come.
Maybe network.
I can still see Tony there, just that his mic is muted. Tony, your mic is muted.
Okay, something. I think my hand touched the screen somehow. You can hear me now?
Yes. Go ahead. Yeah.
Right. So where we are is that we do not need to meet with anybody else. We only need to organize ourselves and act according to the new development. They are the ones who the owners has now shifted. They are the ones who have to come to convince us to come to a meeting of union. Why do you think that place was filled up yesterday with people who had to fly in from everywhere? They know that in the face of the no union reality, listen to me carefully, things are going to happen so suddenly. Many of us will be wondering why they couldn't understand what was being explained, just like nobody seemed to understand anything we were saying across the last many years. There's occultic manipulation to prevent people from reasoning through. But we're telling you now that that constitution is dead. That's why the people who have no ancestral land of their own to retreat to, the Hausa that owns Sokoto and Kano and Jigawa and the other places, are taking back their land because the constitution by which the Fulani have been owning it have been defeated. Is it Yoruba land that will now come and take without challenge, or Edo land, or Ibibio land? So they are running helter-skelter looking for what to do. That's why, did you notice where the doctrine of necessity suggestion came from? They really have nothing they can do now. The guns in their hands are entirely useless. The people who have been, those communities that are being raided in Delta today is because those who should have been thinking for them, leading them, are following that enemy around. If they were not following that enemy, those people shooting at them will not be there shooting at them today. It was because they went to contest the election. It was because they went to swear and defend and uphold that constitution. Their governors, their senators, their house members, in terms of House of Assembly, the House of Reps members, all of those who have become senators, all of those who have become commissioners in the cabinet of the governors, all of the council chairmen, all of them are the ones, all the people doing political party, APC, PDP, Labour Party, ABGA, all of them who swear to defend and uphold that constitution, they are the reasons that those communities are being shot at, are being burned down today. Whereas they can turn around, hold on to what you have achieved for them, and ask everyone to dress back with guns in their hands. Can anybody tell me why they don't have guns in their hands? Oh, constitution say. Which constitution? Should be our collective question. But if we are saying such a thing, doing such a thing as we have done, at such a risk, at such a cost, and they cannot stand up and leave their prison cells, then maybe they truly deserve to perish. Maybe when they kill some more of them, some of the ones who have not been killed will begin to think for what to do. There's no other solution than to topple that bad arrangement, and we have succeeded in putting that monster to death. Why can't we roll the dead body over? That's where we are. The altar call, the only thing remaining for the people who have now agreed, and you can agree with me that what was gathered in that hall today, yesterday represents everything the opposition to this campaign for many, many years. But they have now come to their Jesus moment. They have made a U-turn The only thing is that the question of how do we get this thing we have all agreed upon done? None of them has any proposition. We know the patriots in and out. They have no proposition of their own. And the chairman, let me point this out to you. In his opening remarks, he said something that immediately gave out their motive for the colloquium. He said that where things are now, that Nigeria has only two options: to adopt the 2014 conference report as a new constitution, process it into the new constitution that is just going to be written, or to set up a constituent assembly elected on a non-party basis to write a new constitution. Chief Emeka Anyoko and the patriots are still talking in terms of just going to write a new constitution. And so our response to them immediately in course of the meeting, and is in the Zoom comment section that we wrote it, to say it is not to write a new constitution that will solve the problem. It is to negotiate to get the erstwhile, mark my words, to get the erstwhile constituent components of the Federation of Nigeria, meaning the trapped constituent components of the defunct Federation of Nigeria. You must now, in the face of the defeat of the imposed instrument, first get them to recommit. You have to identify them, who are the we the people. You must get them to recommit, and the only way to recommit is by those regional referendums by which the Yoruba will vote whether they want to federate with other people. Their sovereignty is back in their hands right now. There's no other discussion, there's no other point of starting the discussion legitimately than to get them to recommit to wanting to be in union. Then you have settled we the people. Having solemnly resolved to live together, except you have a referendum today, anybody who says in Nigeria, you are talking to yourself. Before you now come to the third question of committing into writing that which they have agreed, because when they say we want to be in union, that is by referendum. Then they go to the question of the terms of the union. That is where you begin to see in what formation. Are we going back to 10 regions or 2 states or confederation? This is where they settle all those things. What are the things that the center will do for us? What are the things we must do for ourselves? That's where you see the exclusive list or the concurrent list or the residual list. What are the accounting system? Everything you see in the constitution is now in that third compartment. It is when you have agreed to be in union and you have settled the terms of that union in terms of formation and responsibilities, delineations, that you can now reduce it into writing in a document you then call the constitution. So if the patriots are thinking only of going to write another constitution in the two options that Chief Emeka Anyoko outlined, they boil down to going straight to writing constitution. That is the error that Absalom Abaka made. That is the error that Peng Mabeze regretted to his last day. That is the error that NINAS is correcting. If you go back to our first mature proclamation, you will see the subtitle: terminating the fraud of 1999 to correct the mischief of 1914. Go and check it again. Terminating the fraud of 1999 to correct the mischief of 1914. So we say the 1914 amalgamation is no different from the 1999 amalgamation. And since we have worked quietly for 24 years to come to where we are taking down the 1999 amalgamation, is that not the end of the mischief of 1914? Is the union not at an end? And so we just now have to make it abundantly clear to all of those who are making all kinds of propositions that it is not the question of going to write another constitution. It is write another constitution that Olisabokaba was trying to guide them on how to do. It is write another constitution falling on the I almost forgot the motive for that colloquium by our own reading. I pray we are wrong, but I know we are not wrong. The motive for that colloquium is to rewrite the 2014 conference report, which we say we reject because the conference itself decided not the reason that they were convened. The Jonathan that convened the conference said, let us go to the foundation of our foundations in 1940 to see why our union is not working. The conference took a decision not to visit the question of unity. Every other thing they did in the place. That was why we who pressured the then President Jonathan into convening that conference were absent from the conference because the modalities that will have recognized the sovereignties, the hijacked sovereignties of the people were abandoned, not by Jonathan, but by the people who were looking for other things, those who wanted to replace him, to be in power, but to refuse to solve the problem. They were the ones who rallied themselves into what became APC. You remember that it was in that period they were trying to form that party. Our brother Tinubu leading from this side and gathering Buhari and his CPC. It was on the floor of that conference that they now gathered themselves, formed what became the APC proper. They were still at the discussion level, trying to come to where they could go to election together. There were 3 different parties, almost 4, but mainly the Southwest platform and the Buhari's CPC and what was left of ANPP, they were all just trying to get to election together. And so, because the conference of 2014 avoided, evaded, sidestepped the question of union by their own decision on the floor of the conference, the outcome did not, the conference did not discuss the sovereignty of the people, did not discuss the question of whether we have agreed to be in union, which was the reason the conference was convened. And so we stayed away from that conference. We rejected the outcome. We are still rejecting it. We are not going to touch anything from that conference report because, again, their mandate, their terms of reference, I'm sure we're going to find the video where we took on that subject the day after Okuromi committee was announced. Their terms of reference is that whatever came out from their meeting, from the time they derailed the modalities into what they wanted, the terms of reference was then written to say that whatever comes out of the conference, they will incorporate into the 1999 constitution. So that 2014 conference report is anchored on the 1999 constitution, just that they're going to make 600 and something amendments to it. Can you see the madness? For a document of 320 sections, you are proposing 600 and something amendments, and you still think you have a document when the owners of the sovereignty are saying we have not met. Is that not lunacy? So we're going to ignore them in that lunacy. Since they think they become the owners of our sovereignty, we are going to assert that sovereignty standing on our ancestral lands, organizing ourselves, taking back our economic assets, taking up the guns we need, since people are going all over the place shooting at people. Go and look at the list of people. Make a map of Nigeria, particularly that NINAS map. Go and look at the soldiers that advertise. Nobody wants soldiers to be killed. But go and look at the names of the people on that list. We are hearing the side of we saw on Delta TV. We are hearing the side of the story of the community of how the soldiers got there in the first place and what led to what. But to tell you that we are living under a sovereignty that is no more than an army of occupation. Go and see the names of those they say died. Unfortunate that anybody would die at all, both the community and the soldiers. Put put those names on that map and see the picture you get. Put the names of those casualties on that map and see the picture you get. To tell you the attitude of those who receive them to fight you, however they fight and shoot, that's a different subject matter. NINAS is saying we have a union dispute that we have to resolve. If we don't resolve it, we are going to continue to see, we are most likely to continue to see this kind of carnage. 287 pupils will be abducted from their schools. Demand of 40 trillion will be made. Gumi will come out and say you want to negotiate with who? The governor in Alpha say, oh, you see, we can't really go quarreling with them. You prefer the kinetic option in one part, and you prefer the non-kinetic option in the part that people have taken up arms and are dislodging. They are speaking grammar of kinetic and non-kinetic, as if they are talking to fellow goats, because they must be goats in suggesting that we don't understand what they are doing. But it's because our own people chose to sleep in the war front that they are caught in. But we are not all going to join them in that sleep. Rather, from what we saw yesterday, many are going to wake up suddenly. Everything they need to prevail already in place. The work has been done. The system has a choice to surrender unconditionally to this proposition or to be defeated comprehensively when those people stand up. It's as simple as that. And if they stand up before that surrender happens, I can only say sorry for the ones who will be found on the side of that constitution. Let those who want to identify who the enemies are get on YouTube and search for the title battle line. Just click battle line. You will see what will come up. You will see the broadcast of NINAS that defines who the enemy is. All of those that can be counted on the side of that constitution. And that brings me to the closing, in which we are reminding everybody that in December of 2023, NINAS had at the third anniversary of the 2020 Constitutional Force Majeure Proclamation and activation, reminded, we had told everybody we're going to make an altar call. For 3 years we've been telling everybody this constitution is death. Rejection of that constitution is life. That altar call, we said, will issue from NINAS in course of the first quarter. First quarter will come to a close of 2024. First quarter will come to a close on the 31st of March. I think it's on the we're at 19 today. That altar call is where all of those who subscribe to that constitution will be on one side. All of those who agree with NINAS that this constitution has to go down to terminate our misery, to end the stranglehold of this enemy. They are going to have the opportunity to put down their name. And what is the content of it? What is it they are subscribing? What is it they are going to sign up to? They are only saying, everything considered, we agree with the reasoning and the proposition of NINAS as contained in the Constitutional Force Majeure Proclamation of December 16, 2020, particularly the 5-point proposition on what to do step by step to take Nigeria and Nigerians out of where they are to where they can be in self-determination. That is the summary of what that altar call is all about. And everybody will be able to put down their particulars in support of the campaign to terminate the operation of that constitution forthwith and to go to transition. And if anybody thinks that if we don't go to transition, nothing will happen, we can do without that transition when unilateral actions will overtake everybody. Because those who are being shot at, those who are being slaughtered in the manner we have seen, are not going to wait for any meetings or any transition if they can take back their portion, since their economic assets and the guns will be in their hands. I stop here. Thank you.